What's up, Atlanta? This is Atlanta Sports Raw with your host, Jeff Rawlins. We are your one-stop shop for all things Atlanta sports. We talk Hawks, we talk Braves, we talk Atlanta United, and we talk Falcons. And today we're going to be recapping Game 1 of Round 2 against the Philadelphia 76ers in a game that was just a nail-biter in the last few minutes. A huge first half from the Atlanta Hawks where they scored 74 points, a franchise record in the first half of a playoff game. And man, did I call it or what? If you missed our preview show, I said this was going to be high scoring. This was going to be back and forth. But I said they couldn't stop us, and Atlanta was going to come out victorious in Game 1. And they did a 128-124 win on the road, Game 1 against Philly, and just a big statement win for the Hawks going forward in this series. They do it again. Take Game 1, and that's how I said it was going to happen. I still think it is going to go to 6. This was a much tighter game in the second half, and I think Philly learned a lot of things. The Hawks have to adjust going forward, but we'll get into all that. So let's just break it down quarter by quarter. Just a couple big takeaways. The Hawks shot 42% from 3 on the day, and that is an incredible mark. If they can do that all series, I don't think Philly wins a game, but I don't think they'll do that all series. So, and Trae Young was, again, the big star, 35 points and 10 assists. That's the first Hawks player ever to do that in a postseason game. And the big thing, Hawks won by 4 points, and Philly missed 8 free throws. So they had a chance to win the game, and obviously some of the officiating was subject, and we'll get into that as we talk about the fourth quarter. But a good win for the Hawks overall. So let's start off with the lineups. Obviously, we found out about an hour before game time that Embiid was going to be starting, and he had 39 points. When he was able to post up, man, he just was getting it all night, and big for Philly. He did look a little shaky in the second half on his knee, so we'll see how that is going forward. But the rest of their lineup was, of course, Ben Simmons, Danny Green, Tobias Harris, and Steph Curry, the starters. And for the Hawks, Hunter was out. He had some knee soreness that was announced this morning. Hopefully he's able to go for Game 2 on Tuesday night. But he was the only one of the starters that was out. Solomon Hill started for him. He did have the least amount of minutes of all the starters. But other than him, it was Trae Young, Bogdanovich, Capella, and John Collins. And that was the starting lineups. So, start of the game in the first quarter, they had Danny Green on Trae, and he was getting whatever he wanted. He got that step back 3, he got the dish off, he got driving to the paint. Trae was just all over the place. They did not have an answer for him. And because they didn't have an answer for Trae, everyone else was going lights out. The Hawks shot 14 of 18 from the field. Their starting players, that's the starting 5. And Collins was open a lot on the third and second pass. They're not going to knock down everything like they were in the first quarter of this game, this whole series. But that was a great thing to see. They came out firing on all cylinders. They could not miss a shot. And that really played into their hands since Philly had 9 turnovers. Sloppy play offensively from Philly, but give the Hawks some credit. They put pressure on Embiid. They shadowed him with Capella, and it was, obviously he got his points. But Ben Simmons, even though he was driving a lot, he was getting some open lanes. He couldn't make a pass, and after Curry, they didn't really have. And Tobias Harris, they didn't really have another option. And overall, Philly just looked super unorganized on the when Trae was able to get into the middle. It seemed like all 5 of their players were swarming towards him, and it just opened up so many passing opportunities. And he was even able to hurt him with the floater when all their guys were pressuring in on Trae. The Hawks had a bunch of one pass and open shots, which is good to see. that even though they were able to move the ball much, or they were able to move the ball a lot, it usually only took one pass because they were swarming Trey so much. Did see one thing at the end of the first quarter, which was weird. I don't know how long we have to beat this into the ground, but Nick McMillan continues to put on that all-bench unit either late in the third quarter or late in the first quarter, and it just drives me crazy. We saw in the last two games against the Knicks that Trey and Bogdanovich, either one of them was on the court the entire game, and that was perfect. That's the way he needs to do it. So I don't know why we went to that all-bench unit again. Even though Lou Williams was really good, he's not going to shoot that way all series. At least I don't expect him to. And so we need at least one more guy that can handle the rock, bring it down, especially if Philly is going to bring that pressure that they brought in the second half in the games going forward. But moving on to the brilliant second quarter, my goodness, the Hawks had a 20-point lead, or 26-point lead, at one point in the second quarter. They had a 17-0 run in between the first and second quarter, and like I said, Lou Williams was just lights out. He was hitting threes, he was hitting mid-range, he was getting to the board. Even with Gallo still not being able to make a freaking shot, I don't think he really made an impact until the fourth quarter. He had a presence, but Lou Williams was just phenomenal. If he can do that again, then we might be looking at a sweep. Because if the bench can put on that kind of performance all series, then Trey's going to be real healthy going into those late minutes, and we shouldn't have a problem, especially since in the second half our bench outscored theirs 19-5, and Philly had to play their starters most of the time. They really looked gassed in the fourth quarter, especially Embiid. But getting closer to the halftime, Philly did make a little run, and it was kind of going back and forth. Like they'd score 5 or 6 points, and the Hawks would come back with 4 or 5 more. Trey had 25 points going into halftime. He was 4 from 7 from 3. He was just getting anything that he wanted. And 74 points in the first half of the game. Like I said before, most in Hawks postseason history. What a performance. They led it by 22 going into half. It was 20, sorry. 74-54. And at halftime, they made some adjustments. So let's get into that. In the third quarter, they moved Ben Simmons on Trey, and they ended up putting Thibault on Trey in the fourth quarter, or the late part of the third quarter, when Simmons wasn't even working on Trey. They eventually started to trap him more at the point of attack, and that was working, but he was still able to find those passes. Herter was really big in the third quarter. It started off with a 10-5 Philly run before the first commercial break in that third quarter. So that was kind of the telling moments of that. It got really chippy, really physical. A lot of fouls called in the third quarter, and it was just kind of weird. They had points where both teams were super sloppy, giving away turnovers and not making shots. That third quarter was just kind of weird. The Hawks were -4 in the third quarter. Philly outscored them 29-25. But it really was an important quarter because it was so weird, and the Hawks played horrible. They shot horrible, but they responded well on the defensive end and only went down 4 points from where they were in the second half, when Philly really put their foot on the gas, and that helped drain some of their energy for the fourth quarter. So they still kept that big lead. I think it was 16 points going into the fourth quarter. When they came out in the fourth quarter, Trey was sitting. That's the usual thing McMillan does. He usually likes to sit Trey the first 4 or 5 minutes of the second and fourth quarter so that he can end both halves pretty strong. Again, it was a run of sloppy play for the first 5 5 or 6 minutes from both teams. Bogey and Collins were on the floor with the second unit, and Collins was absolutely huge in this whole game. He kept getting open, kept getting rebounds, had that really big lob pass from Trey to kind of ice it at the end, but we'll get there in a second. With 6 minutes left, Philly was making a big run. Herter came in and hit a big three to stop a run, and another big two with about 3 minutes left to stop another Knicks run. And they were up by 17 at that point, or up by 17 with 4 minutes left, and Philly had that run and made it 12 points by 2 minutes left. And that's when Embiid had that weird thing where he landed kind of weird on his knee, and you could just see that that it was pressure time for Philly. The Hawks shot absolutely horrible in the fourth quarter. During that fourth quarter, they were 8 from 20 from the floor, and they were really able to pressure the Hawks. They were doing that 94-foot pressure, the full court, and if the Hawks couldn't get that first and second pass off, then it was usually a turnover, and man, that absolutely killed the Hawks. Yeah, as I said earlier, Philly missed 10 free throws in the game, and that really came back to bite them. But there was that big Collins lob to ice it off. We're up 8 with 16 seconds left, and that big weird play where Bogdanovich had it in, and they swarmed him and fouled him, and he dropped the ball, and they didn't call it a foul, and and that should have been a foul. But anyways, Hawks came up with a big win, and I'm excited for the series. I know it's going to be close. I'm still confident that our weapons have enough to score points. Our defense looked a little shaky at times, and Embiid is just incredible. The way he posts up and can score points pretty much at ease and get fouled a lot. I think he was 10 from 11 from the free throw line, which is incredible for a guy his size to be that lights out from the line. And he could just score at will, it seems like, when he posts up one-on-one. I did like that the Hawks were kind of slowing down their ball movement, though. It seemed like when Philly was able to score, it was either on an ISO or a mid-range. They didn't have many 3 attempts. I think Steph had he was 3 from 6, or 3 of 6 from beyond the arc. And Embiid had a couple, open pass threes that he hit, but nothing to be concerned about there. And the Hawks, were really, really good from beyond the arc. 42%, like I said before. But going forward, I think the Hawks will adjust to that pressure. Philly was really trying to make it uncomfortable for the Hawks. And we'll see what Nate does going forward to deal with that. We're going to probably wait till Game 2 to do another video. Probably won't preview that game because it's going to be a lot of the same. But we'll see what adjustments he makes. We'll see what adjustments Philly makes. And hopefully we can steal 2 on the road in Philly. I'm predicting a Hawks loss, and we'll come back to Atlanta tied 1-1. But we'll see how that goes. And we'll talk about Game 2 when we come back, probably Wednesday night. I appreciate you guys, and God bless. See you, ATL.